the Ravens might be getting ready to hand Lamar Jackson the biggest contract in NFL history. And honestly, this whole situation is starting to get out of control. A reporter just made a massive prediction about Lamar's future, and if this actually happens, Baltimore could completely reset the quarterback market all over again. But there's one part of this story that's making a lot of people nervous. While Lamar's price keeps going up, the Ravens look like they're running out of time to get this deal done. And once you hear how huge this contract prediction really is, you'll understand why this negotiation could absolutely explode behind the scenes in the NFL. The conversation in Baltimore has completely changed. At this point, it's not even about if Lamar Jackson is getting a new extension anymore. Now it's about how much the Ravens are going to have to pay to keep the face of the franchise. And honestly, I don't think enough people realize just how massive this financial situation could become, because the prediction from Christopher Knox of Bleacher Report is enormous. He genuinely believes Lamar could pass Dak Prescott and become the highest-paid quarterback in NFL history. And the way Knox said it made the situation feel even bigger. He wrote, "Lamar Jackson, a two-time MVP, could be just the one to surpass Prescott's deal. When you hear that, you immediately understand how serious this is. We're not talking about some average quarterback trying to cash in. We're talking about a player who completely changed the direction of the Ravens franchise the moment he entered the league. In my opinion, this is exactly the type of player that forces teams to break the market. And honestly, when I look at Baltimore's situation, I don't really see another option. You can question the playoff results, you can talk about the postseason losses, you can debate whether he still has more to prove in January, but at the end of the day, who gives the Ravens their best chance to get back to the Super Bowl? It's Lamar Jackson. Nobody else on that roster comes close to impacting the game the way he does, and the Ravens know it. I honestly think that's why this negotiation is becoming heavier and heavier behind closed doors. The problem is that the longer Baltimore waits, the more expensive this gets. The quarterback market keeps exploding, massive contracts keep showing up every offseason, and Lamar is sitting in an incredibly powerful position right now. He knows what he's worth. The Ravens know what he's worth. And the feeling around this entire situation is that this contract could end up creating a massive ripple effect across the NFL, especially because there's another detail making things even more complicated inside the organization. What makes this whole situation even more delicate is that the Ravens don't really control this negotiation the way they probably did a few years ago. Right now, almost all the leverage belongs to Lamar Jackson. And honestly, Baltimore put themselves in this position. The organization waited too long. The quarterback market exploded. Contracts kept getting bigger. And now Lamar has reached the point where he can realistically sit at the table asking for almost anything he wants. And there's a huge financial detail here that cannot be ignored. The report mentions the possibility of the Ravens taking an insane $84 million salary cap hit if this situation keeps dragging out. That's massive. We're talking about a number that could seriously impact the entire roster construction moving forward. So this isn't just a conversation about whether Baltimore wants to pay Lamar or not. The real issue is that delaying this deal could start hurting the franchise financially in a major way. What's really interesting to me is how Lamar built this kind of leverage without constantly creating public drama. He understands exactly how valuable he is to the organization, because if there's one thing the past few years have proven, it's that the Ravens depend heavily on him to compete at the highest level. When Lamar is healthy, Baltimore looks like a true contender. When he's not, the team looks completely different. And that gives a quarterback unbelievable power in negotiations like this. But while Lamar keeps gaining leverage, the pressure inside the organization keeps growing too. Eventually, you reach a point where you can't just keep pushing the problem down the road, hoping it somehow gets cheaper later. In fact, everything suggests this contract is only going to get bigger. And in the middle of all this, there's still one debate that continues following Lamar Jackson everywhere: his playoff performances. Even though Lamar Jackson is one of the most talented players in football, there's still one criticism that never fully disappears whenever people start talking about a historic contract. Every single time the possibility comes up that Lamar could become the highest-paid quarterback in the league, the conversation always circles back to the playoffs. And honestly, I don't think you can completely ignore that, because a lot of people look at Baltimore's recent postseason exits and wonder if the Ravens should really hand out a contract that could completely reset the market. At the same time, though, I also think it's unfair to reduce Lamar down to only what's happened in the playoffs. Because when you look at the full picture, He's still one of the most dominant quarterbacks in the NFL. The guy has 2 MVPs. He can take over games by himself. He forces entire defenses to change the way they play. So it creates this complicated situation where the playoff criticism is fair. But there's also a very real argument that Baltimore probably wouldn't even be close to these championship conversations without him. The report itself basically hints at this when it says Lamar remains, by every objective and subjective measure, the Ravens' best chance to win a Super Bowl. And honestly, I completely agree with that. You can debate whether he still needs to improve in big playoff moments, but imagining Baltimore entering a new era without Lamar Jackson feels incredibly risky, especially in an AFC that continues getting more brutal every single season, and that's where this story starts getting even more interesting. Because while all this contract pressure is happening, the Ravens are also entering a completely different phase as an organization. There's a major transition happening behind the scenes right now, and that could directly impact when this extension finally gets done. Another huge part of this story is the fact that the Ravens are entering a completely new phase as an organization. After more than a decade of John Harbaugh being the face and voice of stability for this franchise, there's now a real sense of transition happening in Baltimore. And honestly, I think that makes this Lamar Jackson negotiation even more stressful for the organization, because this isn't just about extending a contract anymore. The Ravens are trying to reshape the future of the entire franchise. The report points to Jesse Minter stepping into this new era, and naturally, that creates questions around the league. Every leadership change comes with an adjustment period. Philosophies change, locker room dynamics shift, the atmosphere inside the building evolves, and sometimes even the identity of the team starts changing too. But the Ravens don't really have the luxury of handling this transition slowly, because the Lamar situation is running alongside all of it and putting pressure on everybody involved. And honestly, I think there's probably a part of the organization that wants to first see how this new structure works before fully committing to another massive contract. That's completely understandable. Any franchise would want a clearer picture of how the team responds under a new direction. But at the same time, Baltimore also understands that waiting too long could turn an already difficult situation into something financially dangerous. Because while the Ravens are trying to organize this new era, Lamar Jackson keeps gaining more value around the league, and that creates a very dangerous clock for the franchise. The more time passes, the more expensive this becomes, the more pressure builds, and the more this negotiation starts feeling impossible to control. And honestly, it feels like Baltimore is getting dangerously close to the point where they simply won't be able to delay this decision anymore. If you're enjoying this breakdown, smash that like button to help the purple flock grow. If there's one feeling that completely dominates this entire story, it's urgency. Because time is very clearly not helping the Ravens in these negotiations. If anything, every single month seems to give Lamar Jackson even more leverage. And honestly, I think Baltimore already realizes that. The organization would probably love to buy more time, evaluate this new phase of the team more carefully, and maybe wait for the financial landscape of the league to settle down. But the problem is Lamar's value just keeps climbing. And once you combine that with the insane growth of the quarterback market, this situation starts feeling almost unavoidable. Every offseason brings another record-breaking contract. Every negotiation resets expectations. So the Ravens know that waiting could turn an already massive contract into something even crazier a few months from now. It's almost like trying to chase a price that never stops going up. Christopher Knox basically pointed directly at that reality when he said, "The timing of a new deal is the bigger unknown." Because deep down, very few people actually doubt that Lamar is going to get elite money. The real question is when it happens, and how much Baltimore will eventually have to raise the offer before this is over. And honestly, I think the Ravens are starting to realize they may have waited too long already. What makes this even more intense is that all this financial pressure, all this contract drama, and all this expectation are putting even more weight on Lamar Jackson heading into next season. Because while the entire NFL watches this negotiation unfold, there's a growing feeling that his next move won't just shape the future of the Ravens, it could completely reshape the quarterback market all over again. In the middle of all this pressure, one thing has become very clear. The Ravens aren't just negotiating a contract. They're deciding the future of the entire franchise. Lamar Jackson has already moved beyond the point where people debate whether he deserves elite quarterback money. The real question now is how far Baltimore is willing to go to keep the most important player on the roster for the next several years. And honestly, I think the Ravens know they don't have much room for error here. You can question the playoff performances, you can talk about the pressure, you can debate the size of the contract. But quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson simply don't come around very often in the NFL. And the more time passes, the more obvious it becomes that this negotiation has the potential to completely reshape the market once again. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Lamar Jackson truly deserves to become the highest paid quarterback in NFL history? And how much would you be willing to pay to keep him in Baltimore? Let me know in the comments because I really want to hear your thoughts on this situation that's creating major buzz around the Ravens right now. And if you're a true Ravens fan and love keeping up with everything happening around the team, don't leave this video without sharing it with a friend who's just as passionate. They're definitely going to enjoy this. See those videos on your screen right now? I picked the first one especially for you, and the other is recommended by YouTube. Go check them out and I'll see you in the next video.